Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Welcome to the John Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH. It's a pleasure to be with you on a potentially historical day, and a great pleasure to be with my co-host. Glad I'm not having to fly solo. I have somebody to talk to today. Mike Millard of On Q Home Loans. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, John.
Yeah, I was teasing Delight. I'm like, it's not fair. Your world's been nice and quiet with all this market turmoil and global turmoils.
Well, now you just jinxed it,
surprised.
but that's
yeah,
okay.
I know. Sorry about that, buddy.
That's
Sorry
all
about
right.
that.
But
I just figure, you know what? If I got to go through this living hell, you got to do the same thing. So, how about that?
Okay, I'll take it.
Misery loves
company.
That's right. Aaron Clark of Edgeability. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I think I'm kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I'm just the perfect everything.
Right.
I'm not swaying back and
right.
forth like
Yep.
you guys.
Yep.
So.
That's the way to look at it. That is the exact way to look at it. You talk about not moving. Yeah, you just don't move at all. But things could change. All right, folks, let's get down to business. We are less than 2 hours away from what could potentially be one of the most devastating things that many of us have ever experienced in our lifetime. At 5 p.m. tonight, our time, of course, is when the United States of America is supposed to begin bombing Iran on the infrastructures, the utility plants, the desalinization, everything that's related to human life. Well, that's what this market was focusing on today throughout the trading session until we got into about the last 15 minutes or so of the trading session, and then things changed. Well, at least proposed to change. So we decided the best thing that we could do for you this afternoon is not really get deep into the weeds on stock market strategies, not deep into the weeds on real estate or mortgage strategies, but just really talk through some scenarios, right? Our job, our responsibility to our clients and to you as our listeners is to lay out scenarios. What's going on? What are some possible things that can happen? And therefore, what potentially could you be doing if indeed that happens? There's a lot of professional traders, institutional money managers that are laying out all kinds of strategies right now because we don't know what's going to happen at 5 p.m. tonight. But we are going to bring you up to date on some news that broke about 15 minutes before the stock market closed. Then we're going to move into the rest of the show after the stock market recap of the day. And again, lay out what are some potential scenarios that can happen in mortgage rates, that can happen obviously in the stock market, and therefore what can happen in the real estate side of things. So it's going to kind of be, I'll call it the old smorgasbord. We're going to jump around to a lot of different areas, but we want to get you thinking a little bit about, again, what can happen because the world doesn't know. Now, speaking of the world, let's get down to the big news of the day. Approximately 15 minutes before the stock market closed today, news came out, and I told you this was going to happen yesterday, but it's not for sure at this point. News came out that the president received word from Pakistan that they are urging a 2-week extension on this 5 o'clock deadline this evening. Now, immediately, the market recovered. The oil prices recovered, meaning they went from, they were up a little over $2 a barrel. Worst level today, we're up over $4. Closed up actually a pretty small amount, just $2.80, or excuse me, closed up 60 cents, pardon me. So the market liked this news, guys. But once again, as the boys and I were just joking before the show started, who'd have ever thought that the world would be relying upon Pakistan of all places, to negotiate a deal that, if it comes true, that if the missiles do begin to fly this evening, destroying, again, infrastructure, and as I'll read you one of the president's Truth Social posts today, this could be one of the most devastating things that we, most of us have experienced in our lifetime. But as I said on the show yesterday, I sincerely doubt it's going to happen. Hope and pray it's not going to happen, but I sincerely doubt that it's going to happen. I would not be surprised if by the end of this show, we have some news that this thing has been, again, postponed, right? But I want to start things off with you guys and read some of the comments that the president made today. And we know that he does this. Wall Street Journal had a great story this morning going back since this war began of threats, last-minute ditch efforts, let's kick it down the road, right? And so we know this is some of his negotiation strategies to do something like this, right? You try to scare the heck out of them. I think, however, this time could be a little bit different from the standpoint Iran is being very quiet. There has not been any news that has come out that I have seen come out of Iran saying, yep, we're open to these negotiations that Pakistan is talking about. Again, a 2-week postponement. Hopefully, again, we all want something to be done in a positive sense. But at this point, we don't know. So let me share with you what the president, how he set the stage today. He said, let's see. I want to bring up the comments. Bear with me one second because I had another story. So let's kind of start off with what he said this morning. He said the following quote: "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again if no agreement is reached. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen." And then in capital letters, who knows? He said, "We'll find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world." So that's how our day got started. Market sold off on the news. Wasn't all that bad. Again, down 400 points at our worst level, hovered around the negative 200 point mark for most of the session. But now we fast forward to what's going on right now. So again, as we speak, Pakistan came out about 15 minutes before the stock market closed today and said, look, calmer heads need to prevail. We want this thing postponed for the next 2 weeks. The president came out, said he was in heated negotiations involving the war after Pakistan, in the role of mediator, asked for a 2-week extension for Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The president said to Fox News, "I can't tell you because right now we're in heated negotiations," when asked about the Pakistani request. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said in a statement earlier that Trump has, quote, "been made aware of the proposal and a response will come." Now, Pakistan's prime minister posted on social media that talks were, quote, "progressing steadily, strongly, and powerfully," and that his country had asked Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz for a corresponding period of 2 weeks as a goodwill gesture. Let's stop right there for a second. Aaron, I'll start with you. Do you really think that Iran would go, okay, let all the ships start flowing for the next 2 weeks while we hammer this thing out?
No.
Dwight, you agree with me on that one? Okay,
Yeah.
I don't either. Just want to make sure I'm not off my rocker here.
Yeah.
I don't think any of this rhetoric is going to change anything.
Yeah, I don't either.
We'll see.
Now, Trump called the Pakistani prime minister a highly respected man all over. Again, President earlier today threatened to wipe out Iran's whole civilization. Let's see, I'm going off of a Bloomberg story that just came out. Behind the scenes, mediators then raced to keep ceasefire talks alive. A senior White House official downplayed Iran's maneuver and said that legitimate negotiations continue to take place. Trump said yesterday it was, quote, highly unlikely that he would agree to back off his deadline again. Let's see, what else did he have to say today? That's pretty much about it. He said, we're on the way of upgrading our growth projections for 20. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is another person. I apologize. I'm just trying to read this thing as I'm live right here. Anyways, you get the gist of it.
Now, I did see that they were asking for younger Iranians to make human chains around. Yes, exactly. And when Aaron's referring to as far as human targets, again, this is the infrastructure, right? This is the infrastructure, the utility plants, the desalinization plants, so on and so forth. Now, one other thing that I failed to mention that did happen this morning that, again, put us kind of in this negative tone was, Carrig Island, however you want to pronounce it. We evidently did bomb it overnight. Now, remember, if you're not familiar with that, this is an island that sits about 22 miles offshore of Iran. This is where 90% of the oil that is exported out of Iran is loaded, right? So it's a massive terminal. So look at like Port of Los Angeles and probably even bigger. I don't know the exact size of the actual shipping terminal, but 90% of the oil out of Iran comes, flows via pipeline to, and has storage facilities to this island. The ships pull up, they load them up, and then the ships head out the Strait of Hormuz. So, there's been a lot of talk, of course. This would be one of the targets. We've hit it. I guess this would be the second time that we know. Who knows what really goes on behind the scenes. We did not hit any oil, oil refining assets or anything along those lines. It was non-military areas that they hit. Which, again, this is not a big island, folks. And so, again, second major bombing that has happened there. This is the island also, if you haven't followed it, that many are saying, again, this is all just rumor, that this is where the Marines, the 5,000 plus Marines that are now in the area, would try to make a land assault and put boots on the ground, as the saying goes. And then Trump would take it over. And then, again, think about this. As I said on the show yesterday also, he wants this oil. And so, if you put boots on the ground, God forbid, they're saying it's going to be a very bad situation because it's heavily fortified for what's left. And of course, but if we got it, and then now we control 90% of the oil that's coming out of there. It's not a far-fetched idea, guys. Right, Dwight?
No, not at all, John. I think it's, we're going to know a lot more tonight, how this goes. But, I mean, none of this is good for, morale. It's a tough situation,
Yeah.
And I know it's funny because we often talk how people are disconnected to our world because they don't live in it.
Yes.
But this affects everybody. This is everything.
It does. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I've talked to a few people today, and, maybe it was just dumb luck or whatever, but a lot of people felt very down today. Very concerned. I guess obviously when you're facing a deadline, even though, I would be surprised if the deadline comes true and we start firing or, attacking, et cetera. But I think people are just plain exhausted. I've read a lot of stories just today that just, to your point, Dwight, just from the market perspective, people are exhausted, right? They're tired of chasing the headlines and saying, okay, Iran said this, but they're really doing this. The president said this, but he's really doing that. It's whipsaw, right? And it's exhausting. It's like, man, I can't wait to the day where we can get back to talking about the fundamentals, talking about the Fed, talking about earnings and all the things that normally we can talk about on this show. But again, none of it matters at this point. It really doesn't. If this is the dominating headline that is going on. But I will give you some good news. If this market's been pretty good about predicting things, and I was sharing this with the guys right before the show started, and I'll share it with you right now. The market is anticipating that something is going to happen, and again at the 12th hour, as we'll call it. I'm looking right now. The Dow futures are up 425 points. NASDAQ futures are up 245, and the S&P futures are gaining 60. So, if that's telling you that there's something going on that people know that we don't know, potentially. I mean, it's much better than that being down. So we will see. But again, we're gonna just kind of continue to go through the show, talk about what happens if an attack does occur here in less than 2 hours, as I said, what's going to happen on the mortgage side, the real estate side, and of course the stock market side. All right, let's turn it over to Kristen Snow. She's in the Right Net Traffic Center. Hello, Kristen. Welcome back to the John Sanchez Show on Newstalk 780 KROH with Aaron Clark of Edge Realty and Dwight Millard of OnQ Home Loans. All right, once again, coming up onto a deadline at 5 o'clock. Again, we're all going to be very surprised if anything does happen. Let's tell you what this market did, and then I'll give you an update on the future side of things, because pre-market session, the way the market is trading, they're saying something positive is going to happen, meaning no 5 o'clock deadline is going to roll around and missiles are going to fly. Okay, as I said, if you just joined us just a few minutes before the stock market closed today, Pakistan came out and said they're urging both sides to have a 2-week ceasefire ahead of President Trump's 5 p.m. deadline tonight. Once again, the 5 p.m. deadline at Pacific Standard Time is when, if the strait's not opened and some of the other things that he has said that he wants, then supposedly missiles are going to fly on the infrastructure of Iran and so on and so forth. But like I said, as soon as that Pakistani news came out, market rebounded off the lows. Finished down just 85 points on the Dow, just a fraction of a percent loss to 46,584. NASDAQ made it into positive territory, again, after being down a couple hundred points. Finished up 22 points to close at 22,017. S&P higher by 5 at a close of 6,616. Oil, which again was up over $4 worse level, finished up just 60 cents at $112.85 a barrel. Gold was quiet, no safe haven play here. $2.80 gain, 4,680 an ounce, or 4,686. 10-year Treasury, Dwight, quiet, just a 1 basis point increase on the fourth at a yield of 4.34. Imagine we were quiet in the mortgage market. Take it away.
Well, it did start out a little rough, John. We were down 22 basis points at the opening, but clawed all the way back to, let me just find it here. We clawed all the way back to a plus 13, meaning good. So
Yes.
the price went up. So, 22 to plus 13. What is that? 45, 35 basis point swing.
Yeah.
So to the positive. And so it only goes, this happened right at the very end, just like you were saying.
I was going to say that
4 o'clock. So they must know something is going on somewhere. But so we finished at a 4.4 on the 30-year fixed, John. So that's
just up
not as high as the
not
as high as the 6.6, 6.7 we were looking at.
Right.
A week ago.
But not as good as the 5.99 before the
this time we were looking at 5 weeks ago. So but just a one point increase. So
okay, all right, very good. So pretty relatively quiet. Okay, so here's the update on the futures. As I told you before we went to break, they're very strong right now. At 402 on the Dow futures, The NASDAQ futures, they are on the upside by 224 points, and the S&Ps are up 57. Once again, futures just started trading at 3 o'clock. They've been very inaccurate. What I'm finding is the futures will be down overnight and even into the pre-market. And as soon as the opening bell rings at 6:30, then things seem to either dramatically improve if the futures were down, or the market will go down if the futures were up. So they have not been a real strong indicator. But again, what we've learned during this whole conflict situation is there seems to be a lot of people on the inside that know what the next step of the president is going to be. We joked about this a couple days ago. I think it was last Thursday that there were some huge multi-million dollar trades. The last time a deadline was approaching, that seemed to come right in and short oil and go long the market. And lo and behold, they made a whole bunch of money, and now the SEC is investigating them. So somebody knows something at this point. At least that's the way it's looking, because I can't imagine anybody, guys, that would be, if they didn't have some, illegal inside information, that they would be buying the heck out of the futures at this point ahead of, now we have an hour and a half until the deadline hits. So yeah, hard to tell. All right, Mr. Clark, we've kind of lifted you, unfortunately, out of the conversation. So we come back, I'm going to start with you. We're going to look at a worst case scenario. God forbid these missiles start flying in an hour and a half. What kind of impact do you think it's going to have on buyers and sellers in the real estate market? We'll come over to Dwight, do the same thing, and then wrap up with me with the exact same question. Let's turn it over to Jack Saban. He's got news, traffic, and weather. Hello, Jack. Welcome back to the John Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH with Dwight Millard of On Q Home Loans and Aaron Clark of Edge Realty. Once again, we finished down just 85 on the Dow, gain 22 on the NASDAQ, and a finish of 5-point gain on the S&P 500. All right, we've been discussing, again, this looming deadline. 5 o'clock tonight is when the president has threatened to begin bombing infrastructure sites in Iran. About 1:45 or so today, Pakistan came out and said, time out. Let's try to do a 2-week ceasefire. Iran, we recommend that you open the Strait of Hormuz. The president's been very tight-lipped. Did a few interviews after the proposal came out from Pakistan this afternoon, and indicating, we will see. Futures, again, still very strong, waiting that some last-minute 12th-hour deal is going to be reached. Dow futures right now up 392, NASDAQ's gaining 237, and the S&Ps are up 57. So now we're going to move into our respective areas and talk about, God forbid, what happens if the missiles do begin flying at 5 o'clock tonight or sometime thereafter. Geez, here we go. All right, stop, guys. Here comes the breaking news. Yep. All right, Dow futures now up 600 points, and guess what? I'll let you guys guess. The president has now extended the deadline for 2 weeks. That's what the headlines are saying. Yep. He suspends Iran attacks for 2 weeks. Just like we thought. Okay. Well, let's solve that issue. So now what do we talk about, since we got a 2-week reprieve now? What do you know?
It's still going to put people on the fence. It just puts people on the fence.
No, it does. No, I don't agree with that.
John, I have at least 6 refinance applications. They're all on hold. They're all on hold. I've got a guy right now wants to make an offer today and is saying, I don't think they're either going to close it in a distant future, or I'm not going to buy them. I'm going to wait for this thing to settle down.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Now the headline
on people.
Yeah, there's still no story. I'm just going off the headlines. So Trump is suspending the Iran attack for 2 weeks, subject to Hormuz Strait opening.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, there you go.
So there's the key. So. Yeah, I don't know. Let me
subject. So is it we will do it if you do this, and we're waiting to see if they do that, or is it agreed upon? Because I'm not.
Well,
I can't pull it up. I'm looking for it.
I'm not seeing any. CBC said the futures were up 600. I'm not seeing that. I'm still seeing about the same, up 395. But yeah, we'll see though. Yeah. So now so let's go down this path, guys. So now what we're basically going to look at is, all right, the president has backed up, said, okay, 2-week suspension on this, subject to the Strait of Hormuz opening. What happens if Iran? We haven't heard a peep out of Iran. What if Iran comes out and says, no, we're not doing that? So then where are we, right? So I think that is to your point, Aaron. I think that is the absolute canary in the coal mine here.
Well, how long do you give them? How long do you give them before you either recognize they're not opening it, or they're not? If you're going to give 2 weeks,
they're not going to open it.
That's what I'm saying. I know.
So in the hell they're going to open
all their power if they open that.
You got it. That's exactly right.
No. So you already know that's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. Their goal is to economically choke the world.
Well, you got
it. That's their only play.
That's it. And so, okay, so now this is why we did not have a definitive agenda today on the show. So now let's go down this path. What happens if again, we hear between now and 5 o'clock, we don't hear anything from Iran. Is it still going to go, 2 week suspension? Or if Iran comes out, which they've done in the past, but again, they've been very quiet today. What if they come out and say, no, here's our demands? And opening the Strait of Hormuz, not one of those, right? So then what happens at that point? So there's still, a lot of fluidity going on here, but
The sad part, John, about this whole thing is that whole Artemis thing is just getting kind of tabled.
Oh, yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just amazing when you look at that. I mean, what they've done,
Yes.
it's fascinating. But
yes.
I mean, this obviously is weighing heavier on everybody.
Well, it's dominating everything,
Yeah.
Dwight. Yeah,
Yeah.
to your point, it's
Yeah.
absolutely dominating everything. Okay, Aaron. So let's stick to our agenda here. Let's go back to, because we don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully this thing does get at least postponed for a bit and see what happens. But what does this uncertainty mean for the real estate buyer and seller right now, Aaron? You're in the trenches every day. What are you hearing, seeing? And then, Dwight, I'm so sorry to cut you off, Dwight. I want to come back to what you were saying about some of your borrowers, because that's right along these lines. So,
Yeah, I'm
Aaron,
going to
go
spill
right ahead.
into and launch off of what Dwight said. I mean, there are the buyer psychology right now that, if you're doing something you don't really need to do, or it's not something that has to be done right now, if you have that flexibility, I think that those potential prospective buyers are pulling back a little bit and saying,
Okay.
let's give it a day or two. And then there might be some good news and they go, okay, I'm ready to kind of like take a half a baby step forward a little bit to
Got
see
it.
what's up. But your buyers that are still doing stuff that they have to do, it's still within affordability. We've talked about this all the time. They're still hitting the pavement. They're still doing stuff because they can. It's not really causing massive swings in their world. And so that's happening. And then you're still getting a lot of, Nevada, we've talked about this before, but Nevada's a net positive population growth state.
Sure.
So because of that, you're still getting those people that are leaving a worse situation that are coming here, and they're still entering the market, and
Right.
inventory is still
Regardless
not
of what's
great.
going on in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
That is their big move.
Oh, wow. This is bizarre. Now the futures are only up 42. Oh, no. I'm sorry. That was a bad print. They just changed it now at 435. Let me interject something, because you bring up a great point. And I've put myself in that position because, I've posed this question to you a lot as this turmoil has gone on. Mm-hmm. And I sit there and I think, would I back out, if I was in, like you said, let's say coming from California to Nevada, I mean, you got to have somewhere to live. Or let's just say I wanted to move up to a larger home or downside. Would this situation stop me? And we were chatting during the break, and I want to just kind of bring everybody up to date what we were talking about. There's a whole society that does not ever remember, of course, being in any war, right? The Gulf War really kind of was the last one that we all remember, where we had boots on the ground and so on and so forth. Very short-lived, of course. But, as far as world wars and things like that, majority of people, of course, were not around during that time period. So we as society, we don't know what it's like when our country gets drug into a war. We don't know the economic impacts. And as the old saying goes, if it's not directly relating to me, I don't care about it. That's the way it is. And it's the same thing with the stock market. I have this discussion with people all the time. It's like people do not remember what this market is capable of on the downside. All right. All we know is market gets in trouble, economy gets in trouble. Here comes the Fed, the shiny knight on the white horse, and they rescue everybody. We've seen it going all the way back to 08, 09. And so we as a society are not really concerned that the government or whomever is not going to come to the rescue. So therefore, let's continue on with our personal plans of buying real estate, putting money in the stock market, so on and so forth. And I think that's, on the positive side, that's one of the things that makes our country great is we're very, very resilient because we do have jobs and so on and so forth. But does that tie right into what you're saying, Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for somebody who is more seeking like investment opportunity, these sorts of uncertain times give way to paths that are unseen normally that create opportunities where you can get into some good situations in that arena. And then those people that are making that move from a California, like you were talking about earlier, they're going to make that move because it's still,
no matter what they have
it's
to
still the move they have to make that betters their life and their situation. So you still have, I don't even know how to say it. You have a buffet of prospective buyers and sellers. And in that buffet, there's some people that it makes sense for, some people that don't. And that's why when we were talking during the break, it's so important that it's not a one answer fits all type of
Right.
people. It's an answer that has to be specified for an individual person in your situation with what you're going through. Should you buy or sell? And that's what we do when we sit down and have those conversations.
Absolutely. Guys, bring everybody up to date. Once again, the president has postponed the attack by 2 weeks. Once again, as we said, this is breaking news. Do want to tell you this. Just check the futures. They're now up 616 on the Dow futures. So let's go back to what we were saying before this news broke. Does the market know something ahead of time? Boy, it was sure obvious when we were up over 400 when the show began, right? NASDAQ futures are up 342. S&Ps are up 90. But here's the big one. Oil prices are tumbling right now. Again, we closed at $112.85 a barrel. We're now at $103.16, down $9.79. 8.67% loss.
So, I mean, John, if mortgage rates go as oil, then you could see some relief tomorrow in the, the mortgage rates.
You could. And
surprises.
If something long-term sustainable was announced, Dwight, I think you would see the opposite as far as your world. You'd see the money coming out of the bond market driving the yields up.
Yeah.
But I think again, since the can's been kicked down the road a little bit, I think I don't think anyone's going to make a major asset allocation shift and bail out of the bond market at this point.
So here's the $1 million question then, John. If the conflict gets resolved, is there anything that would prevent the interest rates not to go back to the 5.99 and start that trend downward?
Inflation. Inflation.
Oil
prices have to. Yep. Oil prices have to.
So the conflict can be resolved, but the oil prices need to.
That's right. That's going to be your whole key. And again, depending upon how long this thing lasts. So we're going to have the month of March where oil prices were higher, and that's going to have an impact on inflation. So therefore, that's going to keep the Fed at bay a little bit longer. But here we are, just the beginning of April, Dwight. And if this thing comes to an end, then of course we could see oil prices come down, and then inflation in the April data, coming down, and therefore the Fed could be back on the table. And oh, by the way,
new chairman.
You got a new chairman next month. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly.
Perfect storm.
That's right. All right. Well, I'm glad we were live with you. I'm glad we were able to deliver the news. We will continue on and get into Dwight's world and mind as we wrap up the show. Let's turn it over to Kristen Snow right now, Traffic Center. Hello, Kristen. Welcome back to the John Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH. As we deliver to you breaking news of the last segment, the president has postponed the attack on Iran, the additional infrastructure attack that was supposed to happen at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time today. He's extended it by 2 weeks, subject to the Strait of Hormuz being opened. So we were having a nice little discussion during the break that we'll bring you up to date on. But first, let's tell you what's going on. Dow futures now up 702 points. The Nasdaq's rising 415. S&Ps are up 98. And oil prices now down $10.16 a barrel, a 9% loss at 102.79 a barrel. So what we were saying is, and Aaron, you brought up a great point. This is, of course, a very, very vague news headline coming across. We have not heard from the president, not heard from Iran. We have not heard from Pakistan. What happens? I mean, is he going to say, all right, you've got 2 weeks to get the strait open, right? Do you have 2 weeks to get the strait open? Or do we...
I can't imagine.
Start now.
Start now? Yeah, I mean...
To me, it's got to be immediate or 24 hours or...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you would think, that would come across. I would imagine here in the next, hour, maybe at the most, that we should hear something out of the White House and some more details about this.
Yeah.
Because this is a very vague headline, and I'll tell you what, guys, this is I'm not seeing the headlines coming across a lot of my normal news sources, so I think everyone's just these news sources are just sitting back right now going, let's get a little more detail before we really break the news on this. But boy, and again, if you just joined us, we were joking because the beginning of the show, not just a few minutes after the show began, all of a sudden the Dow futures, they start trading at 3 o'clock, and the other futures, and Dow futures were up over 400 points, and we were joking in our first couple of segments, like, somebody knows something. Like this 5 o'clock deadline is going to come and go. Dwight, while we have a couple minutes, let's bring you into the fold of this. Thank you for your patience. Same question, that we were discussing with Aaron. We find ourselves in a situation where uncertainty exists. Again, please share the story of what some of your borrowers are telling you right now. I'm sorry to cut you off.
And I don't know if it's the perfect or the smart play, but I mean, those that, to Aaron's point, that don't have to do anything, like maybe they're just doing a refinance just to get a lower rate right now, they've held off. They've just hit the pause button. We were in nice territories 5 weeks ago, John, when we broke to 6%, but And then, I've got one specific individual that's saying, hey, I want a longer, it's an inventory home. I want a longer close date because I want this to get resolved. I think I got a better chance. But, we talked off the air, John, I don't know that a 700 plus point stock market increase is good for the bond market, right? I mean, that's what people don't understand. And even though you might get, we were talking off air, even if you might get some resolution to this conflict, it doesn't mean that we're going to go right back to kumbaya and rates are going to go down. I mean, I think there's a good possibility if we can get this uncertainty. But I think now we're out months, aren't we, John? And not days or weeks. We're out months probably before we start to see some real gains or improvements in the rates.
I think you're looking towards the end of the year, to be honest with you. I think because you're going to go through, again, depending upon how long this lasts, you're going to go through at least, like I said earlier, you got the month of March's data. You're going to have April's data. I'm pretty confident this thing should continue on at least through April. So you're going to have a couple months of data showing inflation is kicking up, through your CPI, PPI, PCE reports. You're going to show inflation is kicking up. Everyone's going to start criticizing the Fed, saying, "Don't you dare! There's no way. You have no right to raise, to cut interest rates." And the Fed's going to go, hey, you know what? Let's see one or two, as they always say, one or two reports does not, indicate a trend. So they're going to be in no hurry. Then you're going to get Kevin Warsh coming in mid-May. Like I said, I would not be surprised if the day he sits down at Jerome Powell's desk and does an emergency rate cut.
Like you do this for a living.
Yeah. That's right. So, if you just look at the economic data, Dwight, I'd bet my bottom dollar you're not going to see any help from the Fed until later in the year, November, December, maybe October at the earliest. But on the flip side of that, I'll hedge my bet by saying, don't be surprised if we get an emergency rate cut. And they could use the war as the example. They could say, look, we got to cut these rates. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on this, and so.
But John, what's interesting about that potential move then is you start now looking at a 2-1 temporary buy down again, temporary buying down the interest rate, because knowing that you think they're going to go down and you'll be able to get over the counter cheaper 8, 10, 18 months. Therefore, you don't lose any money by doing a temporary buy down.
Yes.
So those are coming back now. People are going, okay, maybe I just do that. Maybe a 1 year, 2 year,
absolutely.
Type of thing. Yeah.
My advice on the stock market side, again, people are very resilient. Don't know if it's just our clients or overall, but I think stock market is very indicative of our clients. No one's panicking. No one's really jumping in saying, oh my God, I got, this is the greatest buying opportunity. I think everyone's kind of like what you guys are saying in your world. They're just kind of holding pat right now, waiting to see what happens, get a little bit more, confirmation, and then make a decision what they want to do. I'll wrap you up with the Dow futures up 678. The Nasdaqs are higher by 404, and oil prices are down $9.66 at 103.29 a barrel. Again, closed at 112.85. Great job, fellas. We'll do it again tomorrow on the John Sanchez Show. God bless. Have a great afternoon.
Equal housing lender subject to credit approval. NMLS ID number 241259. Guaranteed rating DBA on Q Home Loans. NMLS 2611. NMLS ConsumerAccess.org 775-240-2022.